I'm Rachel Thompson, 38, and I've always been the peacemaker in my family, juggling a full-time job, 2 energetic kids, and the expectations my mother heaped onto my shoulders. Last Tuesday, as I was stirring a pot of Sunday sauce and daydreaming about a cozy holiday, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. Her voice sounded too cheerful to be innocent. "Rachel, sweetheart," she began, "we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." In that single moment, everything shifted. Chloe and Max weren't welcome, but my brother's boys still were. If you've ever felt the sting of being cast aside by your own family, drop a comment below. Hit like and subscribe, because sometimes the hardest boundaries lead us straight to our strongest selves. The conversation that followed caught me completely off guard. While I continued stirring the simmering pot on my stove, holding the phone against my ear, I felt an unexpected uneasiness wash over me. "Rachel. Honey," Mom continued, her voice carrying that artificially bright tone that masks something deeper. "We need to discuss our Thanksgiving arrangements." Even with the underlying tension that had always characterized our relationship, I still harbored dreams of warmth and tradition. The aroma of roasted turkey, the sweet smell of cinnamon filling the air, watching Chloe and Max race through their grandparents' home with unbridled joy. "Of course," I responded, my mind already conjuring images of my children dressed in their holiday best. "What did you have in mind?" The hesitation that followed was brief but telling. Just enough time for anxiety to creep into my chest. "We've decided to keep things more intimate this year. Adults only. A calmer atmosphere," she explained. My brow furrowed with confusion. "You mean no children whatsoever?" Another telling pause. Then came her carefully chosen words. "Well, not entirely. Brandon and Stephanie will still have their boys with them." That's when it hit me. The familiar ache in my gut intensified. Brandon's children were acceptable. Mine were not. "So you're excluding my kids?" I stated, working to maintain composure in my voice. "Rachel, Chloe and Max are simply... they're high-spirited," she offered diplomatically, as though this justified everything. "We adore them, truly, but it can be overwhelming. We're hoping for a tranquil evening. Please don't take it personally." But personal is exactly what it was. It always had been. My children weren't disruptive. They were full of life, affectionate, authentic. Yet somehow, that authenticity fell short of their standards. "You and Ethan are absolutely welcome," she hastily added, as if this olive branch could mend what had been broken. It couldn't. "You're inviting me while excluding the 2 souls I cherish above all else," I replied, my words carrying the weight of my disappointment. Silence stretched between us. Then came her sharp intake of breath. "Fine then," she retorted curtly before ending the call. I remained motionless as the sauce began to overflow on the burner, the sound of Chloe and Max's laughter drifting in from the living room. They remained blissfully unaware that their grandparents had just excluded them from the family gathering. In that defining moment, something fundamental changed within me. I was finished being the one who accommodated their tendency to dismiss what truly mattered. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed beside Ethan, staring at the ceiling while the ceiling fan spun slow, lazy circles above me. My mind kept replaying the conversation, each word from my mother slicing deeper with every pass. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was everything. The favoritism, the subtle digs, the way Chloe and Max were always seen as too loud, too messy, too much. And Brandon's kids. They were somehow always just right. Perfect little angels. I thought about all the times my parents had skipped Chloe's dance recitals, but drove 3 hours to see Brandon's oldest play second base in Little League. The Christmas gifts? Always a little more expensive, a little more thoughtful for their other grandkids. I had told myself for years not to take it personally. But this wasn't subtle anymore. This was a statement. The next morning, while Ethan poured coffee and the kids watched cartoons in the living room, I sent a text to my brother. "Just so we're clear," I wrote, Mom and Dad told me Chloe and Max aren't welcome at Thanksgiving. But your boys are. It didn't take long for the reply. Rachel, don't start. They just want a peaceful dinner. Why do you always have to make everything dramatic? I stared at his words, jaw clenched so tightly I felt it in my temples. Of course he didn't see the problem. He never had to. They're not dramatic, Brandon. They're my kids. And they just got uninvited from their grandparents' house, while yours got a red carpet. The typing bubble popped up. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Finally. They're just trying to keep things simple. You know how your two can be. That was it. The final crack in whatever dam I'd been holding up. You all made your choice, I typed. Now I'm making mine. We won't be there. Then I turned my phone off and let the silence settle in. Because it wasn't just about dinner. It was about dignity, and I wasn't letting mine be trampled anymore. The next morning I woke up to a text from my brother. Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic? I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Of course she had already run to him. She always did? Me. Oh, so she told you she uninvited my kids but invited yours? The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. A minute passed before he finally responded. She just wants a calm dinner, Rachel. You know how your kids can be a lot. A lot. Like they were a burden. Like they were something to be tolerated, not loved. Something inside me snapped me. Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Brandon. I won't be there. I turned off my phone before he could respond. They didn't want me or my children at their table? Fine. I wouldn't be part of their world at all. And they were about to find out what that really meant. For years I had been the reliable one. The one who always helped when they needed something. When my parents needed someone to pick up their groceries, they called me. When their Wi-Fi stopped working, I was the one who drove over to fix it. When they wanted help organizing a family party, I was the one stuck making calls and running errands. And Brandon? He got to be the golden child, doing the bare minimum while reaping all the rewards. But if I wasn't part of their preferred family, then they weren't going to benefit from me anymore. I didn't care if they noticed. I wanted them to. I wanted them to sit in that silence and wonder why things suddenly got harder. And I wanted them to feel it. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it but finally answered. Hello, Rachel, she said, her tone cautious. I just wanted to check in. I know you were upset, but I really hope you'll reconsider. We would love to have you and Ethan there. Not you and the kids. Just you and Ethan. I took a deep breath. I meant what I said, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, neither am I. She sighed heavily, like I was exhausting her. I just don't understand why you're being so stubborn. It's just one night. You know how much Brandon's boys mean to us. And there it was. The final painful confirmation that my children, the two little humans I loved more than anything, would never be enough for her. I ended the call before she could finish, and this time, I didn't cry. I started small. When my dad called that weekend to ask if I could come over and help him set up his new TV, I let the call go to voicemail. When my mom sent a text asking if I could pick up her prescription, I left it unread. For years, I had been at their beck and call. Always available, always reliable. I was the one who dropped everything when they needed something, who rearranged my schedule so they wouldn't have to. But not anymore. And it didn't take long for them to notice. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I had missed a total of 12 calls and ignored 6 texts. Then, on the morning of Thanksgiving, I got another message from Brandon. Mom and Dad are really upset that you're ignoring them. Are you seriously going to let this go this far? I stared at the message and shook my head. Of course he still didn't get it. It already went too far when they told me my kids weren't welcome. I typed. This time, he didn't reply. I put my phone on silent, and turned my attention to my real family. Chloe and Max were at the kitchen table, helping Ethan mix pancake batter, both of them covered in flour and laughing so hard they could barely breathe. This was our Thanksgiving. And for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. There was no rushing, no tension, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. We had pancakes, not turkey. We wore pajamas, not holiday sweaters, and it was perfect. But little did I know, my parents weren't done yet. And their next move would be something I'd never forgive. Thanksgiving morning was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No scrambling to get the kids dressed in their best clothes, no stress about traffic or casseroles. Just us, just home. The smell of maple syrup filled the air as Ethan flipped pancakes and Chloe shouted with delight every time one landed almost perfectly on the plate. I felt light, almost giddy. Until the phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Ethan gave me a look. Want me to turn it off? I hesitated, then shook my head. No. If it's an emergency, I should at least know. I swiped to answer. What is it? I asked flatly. Oh, now you pick up, she snapped. I suppose you're just sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself while we're all here having a lovely dinner. Mom continued, her voice sharp. I sighed. Mum, if you called to gloat, I really don't have time for this. That's not why I called, she snapped back. I need to ask you something. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What now? Did you cancel the credit card? The room suddenly felt very still. I turned away from Ethan and lowered my voice. What are you talking about? Your father's credit card, she said, as if I should know. The one we've been using for groceries, gas, you know, essential things. It was declined this morning. A slow, icy realization crept over me. The card she was talking about wasn't theirs. It was mine. Years ago, when Dad was recovering from surgery, and their finances were tight, I had added them as authorized users on my credit card. Temporarily. Just to help them through a rough patch. I had meant to remove them when they got back on their feet. But life got busy. I forgot. And apparently, so did they. I clenched my jaw. You mean my credit card? There was a pause? Then Mom scoffed. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Rachel. It's just a card. You make good money. And we figured. You figured what? I interrupted, my voice shaking now. That you just keep using my money. That I wouldn't notice. Oh, don't act like this is some big betrayal, she said, her tone turning icy. We raised you. The least you could do is support us now. I inhaled sharply, heart pounding. Are you serious? After telling me my kids weren't good enough to come to Thanksgiving, you still expected me to keep paying for your groceries. Are you even hearing yourself? She let out a long, dramatic sigh. You know what, Rachel? This is exactly why we don't like having difficult conversations with you. You always overreact. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice calm but cold. I did cancel the card. And since we're being honest now, let me make something very clear. You won't see another cent from me. Ever. Mom gasped like I had slapped her. Rachel, don't be ridiculous. I'm not. And while we're at it, don't expect Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, or anything else. You made your choice when you told me my kids weren't welcome. And now I'm making mine. There was a long silence. Then, in the coldest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, You'll regret this. And hung up. For a moment I just stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. Then slowly I turned back toward the kitchen. Ethan was watching me carefully. Everything okay? He asked. I forced a small smile. Yeah, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Just taking out the trash. He didn't ask any more questions. We spent the rest of the day in our own Thanksgiving. Watching movies, baking cookies, playing board games with Chloe and Max until they fell asleep on the couch. For the first time in years there was no underlying stress, no pressure to be on time or bring the perfect dish. No sense of walking on eggshells. Just peace. But as much as I wanted that to be the end of it, something in my gut told me this wasn't over. And I was right. Because my parents weren't just going to let their golden source of money walk away quietly. The silence didn't last long. 3 days after Thanksgiving, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Brandon. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I exhaled sharply and answered. What do you want? What the hell, Rachel? He snapped, skipping any pleasantries. Mom just called me in tears saying you cut them off. What is wrong with you? I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Did she also tell you that they've been using my credit card for years without my permission? There was a pause. Well, she said you were helping them out. Helping them out? I let out a humorless laugh. They racked up thousands on my account without asking, while treating my kids like garbage. But sure, let's pretend I'm the bad guy. He sighed, clearly trying to stay calm. Look, I get that you're mad, but cutting them off completely. That's extreme. You mean the way they completely excluded my children from Thanksgiving? I shot back. They just wanted a peaceful evening, Rachel. Mom said your kids can be a little wild. My grip on the phone tightened. Oh, I see. So they can use my money, but my kids aren't good enough for their table. Got it? He groaned. You're twisting this. No, Brandon, I said coldly. I'm finally seeing it for what it is. He didn't have a comeback for that. After a moment, his voice turned calculating. Look, maybe we can work something out. What if you just kept helping them, but set limits, like a smaller monthly transfer? That way no one has to suffer over a misunderstanding. A cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. Let me get this straight. You want me to keep sending them money, after they literally told me they love your kids more than mine? They didn't mean it like that. He muttered. They said it? I snapped. He had no response to that. After a pause, his voice turned stiff. Fine. If you want to be selfish, that's on you, but don't expect Mom and Dad to forgive you anytime soon. I smirked. I'll survive. Then, before he could argue, I hung up. For the next few weeks, my parents played the silent treatment game. No calls, no texts. I figured they were hoping I'd cave, come crawling back, begging for their approval like I always had. But what they didn't realize was that, for the first time in my life, I didn't need it anymore. And just when I thought they'd finally given up, they pulled one last desperate stunt. It was the week before Christmas when the letter arrived. Ethan found it in the mailbox, his brow furrowing as he read the return address. It's from your parents. I stiffened. Oh, great. Let me guess. Guilt, manipulation, or straight-up gaslighting. He smirked. Why don't we find out? I took the envelope, my stomach twisting as I tore it open. Inside was a formal legal document. My breath caught as I read the words. They were demanding reimbursement for years of emotional and financial support. I let out a disbelieving laugh. You've got to be kidding me. Ethan took the letter, scanning it quickly. They're saying you owe them for raising you, for all the financial sacrifices they made for your well-being. He looked up, jaw tightening. Are they actually trying to bill you for your own childhood? Apparently they were. They had even included itemized costs. Things like food, clothes, school supplies, medical expenses from when I was a child. And at the bottom of the page, a final sum $78,542. I blinked at the number. They seriously thought I was going to give them nearly 80 grand. Ethan scoffed. They must be desperate. I exhaled slowly, fury rising. This isn't about money. It's about control. I looked at him, heart hardening. I think it's time I pay them a little visit. The next day I drove to my parents' house, gripping the letter in my hands. I knocked, and when Mom opened the door, her face immediately hardened. Oh, so now you show up, she said coldly. I didn't take the bait. I held up the letter. You seriously thought this would work? She folded her arms. It's what's fair. I let out a sharp laugh. Fair? You want to charge me for being your child, while expecting free money from me for the rest of your lives. Dad appeared in the doorway, his expression smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, Rachel. And now you're abandoning us. I stared at them, shaking my head slowly. No, Dad. You abandoned me when you made it clear that my kids weren't good enough. When you lied and stole from me. When you put a price tag on my worth. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to involve lawyers. I met her gaze without flinching. Go ahead. She blinked, surprised. What? I crossed my arms. Take me to court. Try to explain to a judge why you're suing your own daughter for expenses from 20 years ago. See how that goes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. I laughed. Loud. Humorless. Oh, I am making things right? Right now? I held up the letter, then tore it in half, watching their eyes widen. I am done being your personal ATM. Mom gasped. You ungrateful little. Merry Christmas, I said calmly, turning on my heel. I walked away, climbed into my car, and pulled out of their driveway without looking back. And for the first time in my life, I felt lighter. As I drove home, windows down, cold air stinging my cheeks, I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit before. They weren't upset about the money. They were upset because, for the first time ever, I had taken back the power. I had drawn a line they couldn't cross. And I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. I thought that after ripping up their ridiculous demand for money, my parents would finally back off. That maybe, just maybe, they would sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize they had pushed me too far. But people like them don't change. They just escalate. It started small. A text from Mom 2 days before Christmas. Rachel, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a silly argument. I ignored it. The next day, another message. We forgive you. Come to Christmas dinner and we'll forget this ever happened. I almost laughed. They forgave me. Then a few hours later, one from Brandon. They're really hurting, Rachel. Just apologize so we can move on. I rolled my eyes. Of course, in his world, I was the one who had done something wrong. I typed out a response. Funny. They weren't hurting when they were stealing from me or when they told me my kids weren't welcome. I think they'll survive. I hit send and blocked his number. Then Christmas Eve arrived. Ethan and I had just put the finishing touches on the tree. Chloe and Max were in their pajamas, dancing around the living room, too excited to sleep. It was perfect. And then the doorbell rang. Ethan and I exchanged looks. No way, he muttered. I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. Sure enough, Mom and Dad. I considered ignoring them. But then I spotted what they were holding. A giant, beautifully wrapped box. I sighed and opened the door.
What do you want?
Mom's face lit up with forced cheer. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad held out the gift. I folded my arms. No thanks. Mom's smile faltered. Rachel, don't be stubborn. Let's not ruin Christmas over this. You already ruined Christmas when you told me my children weren't good enough for your table. Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad sighed. Come on, Rachel. Let's just be a family again. I stared at them, exhausted. You don't want to be a family. You want me to go back to being useful. Silence. Take your gift and go. Mom's face hardened. Think about the children. I smiled coldly. I am. And I shut the door. That night, we had the best Christmas ever. Chloe and Max tore into their presents, their laughter echoing through the house. We drank hot cocoa, played board games, and watched holiday movies until they fell asleep on the couch, tangled in a nest of blankets and joy. And for the first time in my life, Christmas wasn't about proving anything. It was about us, our family real and whole. I thought that was the end of it. That after being cut off financially, humiliated at Christmas, and rejected at my front door, my parents would finally accept that I was done. But I underestimated just how much control they thought they still had over me. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start, a night to leave the past behind and step into something better. That's what I told myself as I set up the snack table and helped Chloe and Max tape streamers to the walls. Music played in the background, and Ethan poured champagne into 2 glasses with a soft smile. It was our celebration, our joy. And then, the knock. I froze, a chill crawling down my spine. Ethan looked at me. You think? I already knew. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. There they were. Mom, Dad, Brandon, and his wife, Sophie. An ambush. I crossed my arms. What do you want? Mom smiled that sugary smile she used when she wanted something. Would just want to talk. No thanks, I said flatly. Dad sighed. Rachel, enough. You've made your point. Now let's fix this before things go too far. I narrowed my eyes. Too far? What does that even mean? Mom and Brandon exchanged a look. Then she said, we just don't want this to affect the kids. It's not fair to them. Something in her voice made my stomach turn. What are you talking about? Brandon stepped forward, arms crossed. Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer. A cold wave rolled through me. A lawyer. Mom nodded, her eyes full of false sympathy. We're just worried, Rachel. You've cut your children off from their real family over a misunderstanding. That's not fair to them. I felt my pulse pounding. What are you saying? Dad cleared his throat. We've been looking into grandparents' rights. For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then I laughed, not a chuckle, but something louder, raw and sharp. They thought they could legally force their way back into my life. Into my children's lives. Brandon's face twisted. What's so funny? I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye, still laughing. Oh, you're serious. You think a judge is going to look at this situation and side with you? Mom's lips pressed together. We've done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. I repeated, stepping forward. You stole from me. You treated my kids like second-class citizens. And now, because I finally cut you off, you think you can bully your way back in. Dad's face darkened. You don't want to do this, Rachel. I met his glare with a calm I didn't even know I had. Oh, but I do. I pulled out my phone and held it up. Think very carefully about what you're about to do. Because I've got every text, every voicemail, every dollar you spent on my card. And I promise you, if you push this, I will bury you in court. Sophie gasped. Rachel, come on. No, I said sharply, not taking my eyes off my parents. You have no case. You know it, I know it, and if you keep pushing, I'll make sure everyone else sees exactly who you are. For a beat, no one said anything. Then Mom's face twisted. You're being unreasonable. I smiled, cold and clear. No, Mom. I'm finally being smart. I stepped back into the house and grabbed the door. Happy New Year, I said sweetly, then shut it in their faces. They never followed through with the legal threat. They knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from them. Not a call, not a text, not a knock at the door. For the first time in my life, it felt like freedom. The weight of their expectations, their control, their guilt, gone. I had drawn a line, and this time I wasn't going to let anyone cross it. In the weeks that followed, there was nothing but silence, no calls, no texts. Not even one of those vague guilt, tripping emails my mom used to send with subject lines like, thinking of you. But body text filled with subtle barbs. I figured they were still waiting for me to crack. Still expecting that at some point, I'd miss the dysfunction enough to crawl back. But what they didn't realize was that, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was missing anything at all. I wasn't craving their approval anymore. I wasn't seeking their permission to feel hurt or draw boundaries. I was done. Truly done. And just when I thought they might have finally accepted that truth, they pulled one last, desperate stunt. It was a sunny spring afternoon when it happened. I was sitting on the front porch, a glass of lemonade in hand, watching Chloe and Max chase bubbles across the yard. Ethan had just joined me, settling into the chair beside mine with a quiet sigh. "It's been quiet," he said, taking a sip from his own glass. I nodded. "Yeah, feels good." He smiled. "Think they'll ever try again?" I watched Max leap into the air, laughing as he popped a floating bubble. Chloe twirled around, her hair catching the sunlight like gold thread. I sipped my drink, feeling the warmth settle in my chest. "Doesn't matter," I said simply. "Because I've already won. I had my children. I had peace. I had a home that felt like mine. Not a place where I had to earn love or walk on eggshells. For so long I had confused silence with safety, compliance with love, but not anymore. I had said no, and the world didn't collapse. I had walked away. And I wasn't lonely. I was free. They thought I needed them to feel whole. But in the end, they were just the noise I finally learned how to silence. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just survive the fallout. I built something better in its place. Something real. Something mine. Sometimes the greatest peace comes not from fixing broken relationships, but from finally walking away. Choosing yourself and protecting your children is not selfish. It's strength. You deserve love without conditions, respect without pleading, and a family that truly values you. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to make a hard choice for your peace? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind you your boundaries are valid and your worth is non-negotiable.